right. Thank you, Miss Woodfin, for letting me come and observe you today. Your class was awesome. It was a great morning. Can you tell me, how do you think it went?
I think it went pretty well with the students. There were moments where they were disengaged, and so it was a challenge to bring them back in to this very hard standard. But overall, I felt like once I started chunking things a little more, breaking things down a little more, moving maybe a little slower for them, they started engaging more and participating more in the lesson.
I agree. I noted that in my notes whenever I was watching you, that you were doing your modeling, and you gave them corrective feedback whenever you were talking about and they were answering your questions, and you even scaffolded down like how you were prompting them, and you helped scaffold like, okay, you're not getting this, I'm gonna mark this off, let's do something else. So you were really working with them on their level, so really good job with that.
Thank you.
So let's look at some of their student work and see how that met the standard.
Okay, so what they did is we did a lot of, like you said, I do, then we do, and then we did several we do's. And then after that, I gave them a prompt in which they were going to turn into a question and then turn that into a central idea statement. And so in this student's work, you can see they were able to turn the prompt into a question, and the prompt was write an expository essay about electromagnetic spectrum. And so first thing they had to do is really understand what is this prompt asking. So that's where we get the turn it into a question. What is electromagnetic spectrum? And so then they had to understand what electromagnetic spectrum was, and then they were able to turn that into a thesis statement. The electromagnetic spectrum is how people see color. And so you know that they're going to build that essay describing how people see color through the electromagnetic spectrum, which is what an expository essay is informing
the readers. Well, I loved how you said in there that you got these words from the civics and science. Yes. I loved that, and I could tell that they were like, what? Like that you were making that connection, and I just really loved that. And I also loved how you helped the students to break down the words to help them see what these words actually mean.
Are all root words that we've gone over since the beginning of the year, and so breaking these words down is essential for them to understand that morphology happens not only in language arts but in science and math
across content areas
and civics.
I think that was really smart, and I know we've had lots of conversations about vocabulary and how important vocabulary is, and I feel like your students have grown tremendously with their vocabulary this year.
Thank you.
So great job with that. Different instructional practices that you did during your lesson, if you want to talk about kind of some of the things you did.
So I have slides for my students, and I start with I do. So I model for them. Here's a prompt. This is how I turn it into a question. So first step is noticing the key words in the prompt. What are words that are essential into writing that essay? And then we go from there to turning that into a question. So what is this really asking from us? And then we turn it into a prompt or into a thesis statement. And so that thesis statement is, what is this text going to be about? What am I going to be writing about throughout? And so I did that for an expository and an argumentative essay. And then we did that for a we do practice where they did it on their desk, writing with dry erase markers and with their group, turning that prompt into a question and then into a thesis statement. And we did that like 4 times. And then they independently did that. So that independent practice also gives me a gauge of like, who is still needing additional support? Where do I need to come back at teacher table and maybe practice this a couple more times with them? Is it background knowledge? So that was one thing I noticed was some of these strategies are the lack of background knowledge for some of them. When we came to the electromagnetic spectrum, they didn't know what it was, and so how can I help build maybe some of that background?
And that was a teachable moment for you right then, and you nailed it.
Yes,
they got it.
So So that was how I did the instructional practices. And so some of it is not just language arts related, it's helping build that background for
Well,
my
I like how
students.
you said then you were able to, them writing on the tables was a quick, okay, who's got it, who doesn't. Now when we're doing the you do part, you were able to really look in and see on their notebooks like, okay, who do I need to go in to further? So that leads to the next question, like what are you going to do next?
So our next step from here is looking at these in my students' notebooks. I went through and did just a quick walk around and check to see, and I then was able to say, okay, these are the 4 students that I need to continue to practice this with. These are 3 students who almost have it, but maybe I can give them a few more pointers to help them focus in. And so what I'll do is take that information and bring them back to teacher table on Thursday and Friday. So I have my regular teacher table routine. And then Thursday and Friday, when they're working on other activities, I'll bring those students back and kind of work with them more independently on those strategies and maybe figure out a different way. I use these sentence strips. I'm going to grab them real quick.
Okay.
This is something that we use as well. It's color coded, and this helps them look at what the topic sentence really is. And so how is that different than what you're writing? A lot of times they're writing the reasons in their topic sentence or their thesis statement before and so they need to have the umbrella of
that this is the central idea, this is what I'm working with. Yes.
So this is a great strategy, and it breaks it down in colors as well. So that is probably one step I'll take of having them build the essay out using this.
Love it. I also love too how you use the strategy of the bump it up words, where you were really having them to look at their vocabulary words that were in there and how can I make this word be bump it up, be better. Like I think the example was some or many, and then you said what's a bump it up word for many, and they said multiple. Like I just thought that was a great job doing that. Tell me a little bit about, and I've been in your room a lot, so I know your students, but tell me about the dynamics that could have student challenges in here.
Yes, so I have 9 ESE students and I have 4 ELL students, and that's out of 17 students total.
And only 4 girls? 4 or 5 girls?
Only 4 girls, yes. So 5 girls, and so it is challenging.
And you have hearing impaired.
Yes. So I have 2 hearing impaired. So I have an interpreter in my classroom. I have a para in my classroom for ELLs, and then I have ESE support. But I only have that during the second half of class. So the first half of class, it's really me teaching whole group and having to push into some smaller groups. Our interpreter isn't supposed to. They're just interpreting. Interpreting. So so really she's an extra adult in the room, but
it's all you.
It's me. And so that means with 9 ESE and the 4 ELLs, oftentimes I'm modeling. I do, and then I'm going to we do. But when we're doing the we do, I'm relying on 2 or 3 students to help some groups that are a little more capable. And then I'm pushing myself into other groups to do that work with them more. I do, and a lot more prompting in those groups. So
well, I think you did a great job with the students you have and the standard. I learned a lot today from being in here. And the last thing, when we had our pre-observation, you had said what are some ways that you can do more engagement. I thought that the writing on the tables was a great way for the students to be engaged. I think they really liked that. The only thing I could think of was just more opportunities for them to turn and talk, because they just did get a little bit squirrely there. But I understand with your dynamics of your group, you have to be very structured. So that would be a suggestion I have. But I think the more they get confident with doing this standard, I think you'll be able to add in more of those Kagan structures and strategies in there. And we can work on that. We can continue to work on that as they go. But I thought it was a wonderful lesson. I was glad to be in here. I learned a lot. I could write a topic sentence and a hook after being in there today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Woodfin?
I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Great.